welcome back to the Deep End. We are diving deep today into something that literally every single person listening does, or at least tries desperately to do, for about a third of their entire existence on this planet.
And yet, for something so fundamental, so completely non-negotiable from a biological standpoint, it's an absolute battleground for a huge portion of the population.
It really is. We're
Yeah.
talking about sleep. And I don't mean the Instagram version of sleep with the perfect high thread count sheets and the beautiful morning light. I mean the gritty reality of it.
Right.
We've all been there, staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m., doing that frantic mental math. You know the drill.
Yeah.
Okay, if I fall asleep in the next 4 minutes, I will get exactly 3 hours and 12 minutes of sleep.
And of course, the great irony is that the act of doing the math is the very thing that keeps you awake. It's just a cruel, cruel feedback loop.
It's the worst. Or, fighting to keep your eyelids open during that 2:00 p.m. post-lunch meeting where the room is just a little too warm and your boss is droning on. It is a universal struggle.
Absolutely.
But today, we are not just sharing life hacks.
Right.
We are not going to tell you to drink warm milk or count sheep.
No, we are going straight to the source. We're breaking down a very, very dense, very clinical chapter from a medical psychiatric text. It's simply titled 70 Sleep-Wake Disorders.
I have to say, when I first opened this file, I was a little intimidated. This thing is...
Oh, yeah.
It's the Bible of sleep pathology. It's thick, it's full of charts, and it is absolutely packed with medical-grade jargon.
Oh, for sure.
But our mission for this deep dive is to translate all of that data into actionable understanding.
That is the goal. We want to move beyond the superficial advice and get into the neurochemistry of why we sleep, what's actually happening when the machinery breaks down, and what the medical literature actually says works to fix it.
It's about looking under the hood.
It is. It's about understanding the machinery, because when you understand how the machine works, the gears, the fluids, the electrical system, you stop treating sleep like this mystery box that sometimes opens and sometimes doesn't.
That's a great way to put it.
So we're going to look at the architecture of a healthy night, and then we're going to tackle what we can call the big three categories of disorder. Insomnia, which is basically when you can't sleep.
Right.
Apnea, which is when you can't breathe.
A big one.
And narcolepsy, when you literally cannot stay awake.
So let's unpack this before we even get into what goes wrong, all the crashes and the breakdowns.
Yeah.
We have to define what right even looks like. What is actually happening under the hood when we drift off? Because I think most people, and I'd include myself in this before I read this chapter, we view sleep as just an off switch. You flip it, the lights go out, the computer shuts down, and you reboot 8 hours later.
That is the single most common misconception. And frankly, it's why people get so intensely frustrated with their sleep. The source material makes it incredibly clear. Sleep is an active, dynamic process.
So not a flat line.
Not at all. It's a roller coaster. The key concept is the cycle.
Right. The text mentions that humans typically have 4 to 6 of these cycles every single night. It's not just one long, uniform block of sleep.
Correct. And each one of these cycles lasts anywhere from, say, 70 to 120 minutes. So you aren't just asleep, you are riding this wave. You start in what's called NREM, or non-rapid eye movement sleep, and you progress through these stages until you hit your first period of REM, rapid eye movement. And you just do this loop over and over and over.
Okay, let's break down those stages because the text gets really specific here. And I think knowing this helps you understand why you might wake up feeling groggy, even if the clock says you slept enough hours. It starts with stage 1.
Stage 1 is the on-ramp. That's the best way to think of it. It's the bridge between being fully awake and being asleep. You know that feeling when you're just drifting, maybe you're watching a movie and your head starts to nod?
Or that sudden hypnic jerk where you feel like you're falling for a second.
I hate that feeling.
Me too. It feels like you slipped on a banana peel in your mind.
That's it. That is your brain chemically shifting gears. In stage 1, you are technically asleep, but you're very, very easily aroused. If someone even whispers your name, you're up. It's a light transitional state. You haven't really parked the car in the garage yet.
So where's the garage? Where's the deep restorative stuff we're all chasing?
That happens as you descend into stages 3 and 4. The text groups these together and calls them delta sleep.
Or slow wave sleep, right? I saw that term a lot.
Yes, exactly. And this is so crucial to understand. When we say slow wave, we are literally talking about the electrical activity in your brain. When you're awake, your brain waves are fast, erratic, high frequency. It looks like a storm on an EEG. Total chaos. In delta sleep, they slow way, way down into these big, long, rolling, synchronized waves. This is the deep stuff. This is the physically restorative phase.
This is the battery charger.
That's the perfect analogy. This is when your body repairs tissue. It builds bone and muscle. It strengthens the immune system. If you wake up feeling physically rested, like your bones aren't tired anymore, it's because you spent enough quality time in delta sleep.
But this is where it gets really interesting and honestly a little spooky. As we
Ah.
move through the night, we come out of that deep basement level and we hit REM.
The Wild West of sleep.
That's what you called it. It fits.
It really is. The source describes REM in a way that sounds completely paradoxical. It's characterized by a low-amplitude, mixed-frequency electroencephalogram.
Okay, so in plain English, what does that mean?
It means your brain waves look remarkably similar to when you were wide awake. If I were a researcher looking at a scan of your brain during REM and I couldn't see your body, I might think you were doing a crossword puzzle or driving a car.
Seriously, your brain is that active.
Oh yeah. During REM, your cerebral blood flow increases, your metabolic activity spikes, your brain is burning almost as much glucose as it does when you're awake and working, your heart rate and your respiratory rates start fluctuating wildly. Your brain is, for all intents and purposes, on fire with activity.
But, and this is the giant but, your body is paralyzed.
Muscle atonia, that's the clinical term for it. It is a total system-wide lockdown of your voluntary muscles.
Why? I mean, that seems dangerous. From an evolutionary standpoint, if a predator, a tiger, comes into the cave, I don't want to be paralyzed.
Well, think about what's happening in your brain during REM.
Dreaming.
Vivid, intense, often very active dreams. If your brain is telling your legs to run from some nightmare monster, you do not want your physical legs to actually start running you full speed into the bedroom wall.
Oh, okay, so it's a safety mechanism. It's self-preservation.
It's a biological straitjacket for your own protection. You're having these vivid hallucinations because your visual and emotional centers are fully online, but your spinal cord effectively cuts the connection to the muscles. It's this incredible physiological paradox. A hyperactive brain trapped inside a completely frozen body.
That is just wild to think about. Every single night, we effectively hallucinate while being paralyzed.
So you have this architecture,
Yeah.
the light sleep on ramp, the deep restorative delta sleep, and then this vivid active REM sleep. But the source points out that this architecture isn't static. It changes as we get older.
Unfortunately, yes. The aging brain really struggles to maintain this beautiful structure. We hear all the time about older people sleeping less, but it's more complex than just the number of hours. The text notes that the elderly experience much lighter, more fragmented sleep. They have more arousals or mini awakenings during the night.
And specifically, they lose the good stuff, don't they? They lose that delta sleep. That's the biggest hit. There is a gradual but significant reduction in that slow-wave delta sleep. By the time you're in your 70s or 80s, you might have very little, if any, delta sleep at all.
So that explains why, say, my grandfather would sleep for what seemed like 8 hours but still wake up feeling completely exhausted, or why he'd need a nap at 11 in the morning.
That's it exactly. The quantity of time spent in bed might be there, but the quality, the depth, has eroded over time. It's like trying to charge your phone with a loose cable. It's plugged in, but it's not really getting the juice it needs.
Now, I want to get into the mechanics of this whole switch. We promised neurochemistry. What are the chemicals that are actually pulling the levers here? Because I think we all know about melatonin, but the text lists a whole cocktail of other compounds.
It really is a cocktail. It's a delicate balance of on and off switches in the brain. Think of it like a seesaw. On one side, you have the wake system, and the source lists this whole team of chemicals working to keep you alert. You have dopamine, that's your reward and alertness chemical.
For the go signal.
Right. Then you have norepinephrine, which is adrenaline's cousin, that gives you focus and drives the stress response. Acetylcholine, histamine.
Wait. Histamine, is that why antihistamines knock me out?
Precisely. That is not a side effect. It's the main effect. Histamine isn't just for allergies. In the brain, it's a potent wake-promoting neurotransmitter. So when you take Benadryl, which is diphenhydramine, to stop sneezing, you are blocking that wakefulness signal in your brain, which basically crashes the system into sleepiness.
That makes so much sense. I always just assumed it was a weird side effect, but no, it's the direct mechanism.
It is. And then you have these things called neuropeptides, like substance P in the hypothalamus. All of these are working in concert to keep the lights on during the day.
And what about for REM? The text mentions something very specific about that particular switch.
REM is fascinating because it has a very specific trigger. The text says REM sleep is turned on specifically by cholinergic cells.
Cholinergic just refers to acetylcholine again.
Yes, and this is really interesting because acetylcholine is also very active when you're awake. Remember how we said the brain in REM looks like a waking brain? Well, chemically, it shares that one driver. So while the other wake systems like norepinephrine and histamine shut down for the night, this specific cholinergic system ramps up to launch you into that dream state.
It's like the brain has a specific dream mode key that it turns. Okay, so that's the baseline. That is the well-oiled machine. But for millions and millions of people, that machine is broken. So let's talk about the big one, the one most listeners are probably dealing with right now, insomnia.
The most common complaint in all of sleep medicine, by a long shot.
And the source is careful to define it as more than just being awake. It's not just deciding to stay up late and watch Netflix.
Right. It's not a choice. It is specifically the difficulty in falling asleep or maintaining sleep or, and this is a really crucial part, having non-restorative sleep.
That's the one.
Yeah, that means you slept, the clock says you were out for 7 hours, but you woke up feeling like you were hit by a truck. No restoration occurred.
I think we've all had that experience. But how do doctors classify it? I mean, when does a bad week of sleep turn into an actual medical disorder?
They break it down by duration. If it's just a couple of nights, usually due to some identifiable stressor or a situation, that's transient insomnia.
Like the night before a big presentation or, your wedding day.
Exactly. Your brain is hyper-aroused because of an event. That's a normal human response. Then you have short-term insomnia, which is anything less than about 3 weeks. But the real beast, the one that ruins lives, is chronic insomnia. And that's when the problem persists for more than a month.
And the source suggests that once it hits that chronic stage, it's rarely just bad luck or a random thing.
Correct. Chronic insomnia is often a symptom, not just a standalone disease. It's a signal that something else is wrong. It's frequently linked to other medical or psychiatric issues or substance use. The text lists this huge net of causes: stress, jet lag, shift work, which is just physically brutal on the body, chronic pain, mood disorders like anxiety and depression.
It's that classic chicken and the egg problem, isn't it? Does the depression cause the insomnia, or does the lack of sleep make you depressed?
It's bidirectional. It's a feedback loop. They feed each other. The text also mentions medication side effects. Steroids are a huge offender here. Anyone who's been on prednisone knows it makes you feel completely wired.
And substance withdrawal, too. So if you're suffering from this, what do? I feel like the immediate reaction for most people in our culture is, give me a pill, just fix it. But the source material actually puts something else entirely as the first step.
Yes, and this is the most important part of the insomnia section, in my opinion. It's the non-pharmacologic solutions. This is considered the first line of defense, and honestly, it's where most people fail because it requires actual work. It requires behavioral change, not just passive pill taking.
Let's start with stimulus control.
Yeah.
This sounds like you're training a dog, but it's essentially training your own brain.
It is 100% psychological retraining. You have to understand that your brain is an association machine. It is a pattern recognition engine. That's what it does. So if you spend hours and hours in bed worrying, checking your phone, watching TV, or arguing with your partner, your brain builds an association. It associates the bed with activity, stress, and entertainment. It no longer associates the bed with sleep.
So what are the rules? The text lists a few very specific and very strict rules to break that faulty association.
Rule number 1, establish regular wake and sleep times. And this is the killer. This includes weekends. You cannot cheat on Saturday and expect to be able to sleep on Sunday night.
Ouch. I feel seen. That whole concept of social jet lag where you stay up late Friday and sleep in Saturday, it just destroys your internal rhythm.
It does. Your brain craves that consistency. Rule number 2, the bed is sacred. You use it only for 2 things: sleep and intimacy. That is it. No reading, no TV, no scrolling TikTok.
Okay, but let's be realistic. That sounds great on paper, but who actually does that? For a lot of people, the bedroom is the only private space they have in their home. If you tell them to banish their phone, aren't you just adding another layer of stress?
It's a difficult ask, I won't deny that, but you have to weigh the cost. If your phone usage in bed is actively cueing your brain to be alert, you are sabotaging the very chemistry we just talked about. You're blasting your eyes with blue light, which directly suppresses melatonin, and you're engaging your dopamine system with endless content. It's the anti-sleep device.
Okay, fair point. It's a trade-off. Now, rule number 3. This is the one I find the most difficult and the most counterintuitive. I call it the bed is lava rule.
The 20-minute rule. If you do not fall asleep within roughly 20 to 30 minutes, you must get out of bed.
That just feels so wrong. You want to sleep, so you're telling me to leave the place where sleep happens at 3 a.m., it's cold, the floor is cold. You want me to get up and go sit in the living room?
Yeah.
That sounds like a punishment.
It feels like a punishment, but it is essential conditioning. You have to break the cycle of frustration. If you stay there, tossing and turning, staring at the clock, stewing in your own anxiety, you are conditioning yourself to be anxious in bed. You are literally training your brain that bed, worry, and frustration.
So what do?
The text says, leave the bed. Go to another room, keep the lights extremely low, and do something mind-numbingly boring.
Like what? Reading the tax code.
Read a dull book, listen to some soft instrumental music, but whatever you do, do not look at screens. Wait until you are physically drowsy, your eyes are heavy, your head is nodding. Then and only then do you go back to bed. And if you don't fall asleep in another 20 minutes, you repeat the whole process.
That is tough discipline, but I get the logic now. You're trying to protect the bed as a sleep-only sanctuary. The text also mentions sleep hygiene. We hear this term thrown around a lot, but what are the clinical specifics?
Some of it is what you'd expect. Exercise is great, it creates a sleep drive, but the text specifically warns not close to bedtime. Because intense exercise increases your core body temperature and releases cortisol, both of which are powerful wakefulness signals to the brain. You want to be cooling down to sleep, not heating up.
Right. And what else?
Environment control's huge. Keep the room cool, dark, and quiet. But there's a specific note here about removing illuminated clocks.
Because watching the minutes tick by just induces anxiety.
It's a vicious feedback loop. Oh, great, it's 3:05 a.m. If I fall asleep right now, I can get 4 hours. Okay, now it's 3:15, so I only get 3 hours and 45 minutes. That math is the enemy of sleep. The advice is to turn the clock around or tape over the LED. Just do not look at the time.
And, of course, the dietary restrictions.
Yeah.
Limiting alcohol, caffeine, nicotine in the evening.
Nice.
And avoiding large fluids so you aren't waking up multiple times to use the restroom.
Which just fragments your sleep cycles and ruins the architecture.
There's one more technique in this section that I found fascinating. Under cognitive techniques, it mentions scheduling worry time.
I love this one. It's so practical. The idea is that you're going to worry. It's a part of being human. But instead of letting those worries ambush you the second your head hits the pillow, which is often the first quiet moment you've had all day, you schedule an appointment with them.
You make time for it.
Exactly. Say, at 4:00 p.m. every day, you sit down with a notebook and you process your troubles. You write them down. You brainstorm solutions. You do the work then. You compartmentalize the anxiety. So when a worry pops up at 11:00 p.m., you can mentally say to it, nope, I already dealt with you at 4 p.m. We're done for the day. I'm off the clock.
That is actually really brilliant. It gives the anxiety a designated place to go so it doesn't invade the bedroom. Okay, so let's say you've done all this. You've tried the hygiene, you've taped over your clock, you've scheduled your worry time, and you're still staring at the ceiling. That is that moment of desperation where most people reach for the nightstand. We have to talk about the pharmacology.
Section 3, the medicine cabinet.
The text lists a lot of drugs here, but it starts with a core philosophy. The goal is to correct the complaint and improve daytime function, but these drugs should be used carefully.
Carefully is the operative word, and temporarily is the implied word that should go along with it.
Let's start with the old guard, the benzodiazepines.
These are your classic sleeping pills. Drugs like temazepam, triazolam, flurazepam, they've been around for a very long time. They work by binding to GABA-A receptors in the brain.
And GABA is essentially the brakes of the brain, right? It slows everything down.
It's the primary inhibitory neurotransmitter. It tells neurons to stop firing. So these drugs just get in there and slam on the brakes. They're powerful sedatives, muscle relaxants, anti-anxiety agents, and anticonvulsants.
They will absolutely knock you out.
They will render you unconscious. But, and this is a massive, massive distinction, unconsciousness is not the same thing as natural sleep.
Can you explain that difference?
Remember that beautiful sleep architecture we talked about? The delicate wave of delta and REM sleep? Benzodiazepines crush it. They flatten it. They specifically decrease your deep restorative delta sleep, and they decrease your REM sleep.
So you're asleep.
You're in a drug-induced coma, more or less. You're not moving or talking, but you are not getting the deep restoration or the mental processing that happens in natural sleep stages.
That explains that hangover feeling that some people describe. You wake up after 8 hours on a benzo and you just feel like you're walking through mud all day.
That's a huge part of it, yes. And tolerance develops shockingly quickly. The text says that tolerance to the hypnotic effects, the sleep-inducing part, can happen in just 2 weeks.
2 weeks? That's nothing.
It's nothing. So you start needing a higher dose to get the same effect. And then when you try to stop, you often get this horrible rebound insomnia, which is frequently much worse than the original problem because your brain has forgotten how to initiate sleep on its own. It's become dependent on the drug.
And there's a very specific and serious warning for the elderly here in the source.
A major warning. Drugs with a long half-life, like fluorazepam, stay in the system for a very long time. They accumulate in the body. This leads to next-day confusion, grogginess, and poor coordination. And in the elderly, this is a leading cause of falls and hip fractures.
So it's a terrifying cascade. You take a pill to sleep, you wake up groggy and unsteady, you trip on a rug on your way to the bathroom, and you break a hip.
That is the exact scenario that plays out all the time, which is why the medical field has largely moved away from these for first-line treatment. They moved toward the so-called Z drugs.
The non-benzodiazepine GABA agonists. This is zolpidem, which everyone knows is ambient azopiclone, which is Lunesta and Zaloplan.
Right.
Why are these preferred? How are they any different if they still work on GABA?
They bind to the same GABA receptors, but you can think of them as being like a sniper rifle instead of a shotgun. They are much more selective for a specific subtype of that receptor, the one that primarily controls sleepiness, while touching the other receptors less.
So you get less of the muscle relaxation and less of the anti-anxiety effect.
Yeah, correct. And the big advantage, at least theoretically, is that they have less withdrawal, less tolerance, and less rebound insomnia. And crucially, they have a minimal effect on sleep stages. They preserve that delicate architecture much better than the old benzos. You still get some of your delta and REM sleep.
But they are not without their own unique quirks. I feel like everyone has an Ambien story, or at least knows someone who does.
That is putting it mildly. The side effect profile for these drugs is just bizarre.
The source material has a very specific warning for zolpidem regarding complex sleep behaviors.
Yes. And this is where it gets genuinely scary. We aren't just talking about a dry mouth or a headache. We are talking about sleep eating and sleep driving.
Driving a car while you're asleep.
Fully asleep, eyes might be open, hands on the wheel, operating a vehicle, but the consciousness is completely offline. There are documented cases of people driving to the store or making bizarre phone calls or cooking full, elaborate meals in the middle of the night.
The Ambien walrus meme comes to mind. People posting online about the weird things they did.
It's funny on the internet, but clinically it's incredibly dangerous. The text explicitly mentions sleep eating as a well-documented side effect. People wake up with crumbs in the bed, empty wrappers on the floor, or sometimes truly weird concoctions in the kitchen, like a stick of butter dipped in mustard, and they have zero memory of doing any of it.
That is terrifying. It's a state of complete dissociation from your actions.
It is. Your motor cortex is working, your hunger drive is clearly working, but your memory recorder is switched off.
And azopiclone, or Lunesta, has its own weird one too, right? Something about taste.
An unpleasant taste?
Like metallic? Is that what people say?
Yes. Patients describe it as tasting like you're sucking on a penny. And it's not just when the pill goes down. The drug is actually secreted in the saliva, so everything you eat or drink the next day might have this strange metallic taste.
Gross. That would definitely ruin your morning coffee. Okay, so those are the heavy hitters, the Z drugs. What else is in the cabinet for someone who maybe doesn't want to risk sleep driving to Taco Bell?
Well, for patients who maybe shouldn't be on a controlled substance, perhaps they have a history of addiction, there's a drug called Ramelteon. It's a melatonin receptor agonist.
So it just mimics what melatonin does naturally in the brain.
It hits the same buttons, exactly.
Right.
It's not a controlled substance, so there's little to no abuse potential. And a big plus is that it doesn't depress your breathing, so it's a good choice for patients with respiratory issues like COPD or sleep apnea who might actually stop breathing if you give them a heavy-duty sedative.
And what about antidepressants? I feel like I see trazodone prescribed for sleep all the time, even for people who aren't depressed.
It's very, very common. Trazodone is an older antidepressant that just happens to be incredibly sedating at lower doses. It's not addictive in the same way benzos are, which makes it an attractive option, but it does carry risk of something called orthostatic hypotension.
Which is what, exactly?
It's when you stand up too fast and your blood pressure plummets, making you feel dizzy or even faint.
Not ideal for that midnight bathroom run.
No, not at all. And there's also a rare but very serious side effect called priapism.
Which we probably don't need to describe in graphic detail, but...
It's a prolonged, painful erection that is completely unrelated to any sexual interest. It is a medical emergency that can lead to permanent damage if not treated. It's very rare. But patients, especially male patients, need to be warned about it.
Duly noted. And lastly, what about the over-the-counter stuff, the things you can just grab at the pharmacy or the herbal aisle? What about just taking Benadryl or valerian root?
The source mentions antihistamines like diphenhydramine, which is Benadryl, or the PM in Tylenol PM. As we already discussed, they work by blocking histamine to make you sleepy, but they're generally less effective than prescription meds, and tolerance builds in just a few days.
And they have other problems, right?
Yes, they have what are called anticholinergic side effects: dry mouth, urinary retention, constipation, and most worryingly, confusion. In the elderly population, chronic use of anticholinergics is strongly linked to an increased risk of cognitive decline and dementia. It's really not something you should be taking every single night for years on end.
Wow. And valerian, the herbal option.
The dirty root. It smells like old gym socks. The text notes, the dose is around 300 to 600 milligrams, but the huge issue with it is consistency. Because it's an herbal product, it's not regulated by the FDA like a drug. One pill from one bottle might be potent, and the next one you buy might be basically sawdust. The evidence for its effectiveness is mixed at best.
So the big takeaway from the medicine cabinet section is that there really is no magic bullet.
There is no magic bullet. Everything has a trade-off. You are either messing with your sleep architecture, or you are borrowing sleep from tomorrow, or you are risking some pretty significant side effects.
Okay, let's pivot. We've talked at length about not being able to sleep. Now let's talk about when sleep itself becomes physically dangerous. Section 4. The breathless sleep, sleep apnea.
This is a massive, massive public health issue. It is estimated that a huge percentage of the population has this condition and has no idea.
The text distinguishes between two main types, obstructive and central. Let's start with obstructive, or OSA, which I think is the one most people have heard of.
Think of this as a plumbing problem.
Plumbing. Okay, I like that.
Obstructive sleep apnea is purely mechanical. When you fall asleep, all the muscles in your body relax. For some people, the tissue in their throat, the back of the tongue, the soft palate relaxes so much that it collapses backward and physically blocks the airway.
It's like stepping on a garden hose.
That is the perfect analogy. The air simply cannot get in. You are trying to breathe, your chest and diaphragm are still moving, but the pipe is clamped shut. This leads to a repetitive cessation of breathing, an apnea.
And what does that do to the body? That sounds bad.
It's very bad. Your blood oxygen levels start to drop. That's called desaturation. At the same time, carbon dioxide builds up. Your brain, which is monitoring this constantly, realizes, hey, we are suffocating down here. So it triggers a panic alarm.
The save.
Right. It sends a jolt of adrenaline through your system, which causes a microarousal. It wakes the brain up just enough to stiffen the throat muscles, force the airway open, and take a big gasp of air to resume breathing. You might hear this from a partner as a loud snort or choking sound.
But the person doesn't fully wake up and realize what happened.
Usually not. They have no memory of it. They just fall right back asleep, the muscles relax again, the airway collapses again, and the entire cycle repeats.
How often can this happen?
In severe cases, hundreds of times a night. Imagine if I came into your room and gently shook you awake every 2 minutes, all night long, for years.
Yeah, it sounds like a form of torture.
It is, for your body. Your sleep architecture is completely shredded. You never get to spend any meaningful time in that deep, restorative delta sleep. The classic symptoms are heavy snoring, the gasping sounds, morning headaches from the CO2 buildup, and just extreme irritability and poor memory during the day.
And the long-term health risks are really serious.
Yeah.
This isn't just about, I'm a little tired.
No, this kills people. It's a direct cause of hypertension, cardiac arrhythmias, heart failure, and even sudden death in your sleep. Your heart is working a double shift every single night, just trying to keep you alive while you repeatedly struggle to breathe.
So what are the treatments?
The gold standard, the most effective treatment, is CPAP continuous positive airway pressure.
The mask.
The mask. It's a machine that sits on your nightstand and pushes a continuous stream of air through a hose to a mask on your face. That air acts as a pneumatic splint. It basically blows the airway open and keeps it open so it can't collapse.
I know it works, but it seems hard for people to stick with. It's not exactly sexy to wear to bed.
Compliance is a huge issue. It can be uncomfortable, it can be loud. It's just hard to get used to sleeping with a leaf blower attached to your face. But for the people who do stick with it, it is absolutely life-changing. They describe feeling like they've been reborn.
And the source also mentions lifestyle changes, of course.
Weight loss is crucial. Neck girth is a major predictor of apnea. Extra fatty tissue just physically pushes on the airway. And the other big one is avoiding central nervous system depressants, especially alcohol.
Why alcohol specifically?
Hmm.
I think a lot of people think a nightcap helps them relax and sleep better.
We're back to the mechanics, the plumbing. Alcohol is a muscle relaxant. It makes the muscles of your throat even floppier and more prone to collapse, and it makes it harder for your brain to wake you up to save yourself. So, self-medicating your bad sleep, which might be caused by apnea, with a drink is actually making the mechanics of the problem significantly worse. You are effectively sedating yourself while someone is choking you.
That is a very chilling image. Now, quickly, what about the other type? Central sleep apnea, CSA.
This is a completely different beast. With CSA, the airway is wide open, the plumbing is fine, but the pump stops working.
The pump being?
The brain. The brain literally forgets to send the signal to the lungs to breathe. It's a failure of respiratory effort. There's no blockage, you just stop trying to breathe for a period of time.
That sounds much more neurological in nature.
It is. It's often caused by other underlying conditions, like congestive heart failure. It can also be caused by being at high altitude or, very commonly, by opioid use.
Why opioids?
Opioids are famous for suppressing the respiratory drive in the brainstem. That's how fatal overdoses kill people. They just forget to breathe and stop. In lower chronic doses, it can cause this central apnea pattern during sleep.
Is the treatment different for this?
It is. A special type of PP machine can help, often with added oxygen. But the text mentions a fascinating drug called acetazolamide.
What does that do?
It works by creating a mild metabolic acidosis.
Acidosis sounds bad. Why would we want to make the body more acidic?
It sounds scary, but it's a brilliant biological trick. The drug makes the blood just slightly more acidic. Your brain is constantly monitoring blood acidity because it correlates with CO2 levels. So if the blood becomes more acidic, the brain thinks, oh no, there's too much CO2. I need to breathe more and faster to blow it off. It chemically yells at the lungs to keep moving. It's artificially stimulating that respiratory drive that's gone missing.
That is an incredibly clever way of hacking the body's own systems. Okay, so we've covered insomnia, can't sleep, and apnea, can't breathe. Now, we arrive at what is perhaps the most misunderstood and frankly dramatic disorder of the bunch. Section 5, the waking dream. Narcolepsy.
Narcolepsy is just fascinating because pop culture gets it so wrong. In movies and TV shows, it's always portrayed as a guy just falling face first into a bowl of soup mid-sentence.
Right. It's treated as comedic sudden fainting.
But the reality is a much more complex and devastating instability of the sleep-wake boundaries. It's not just falling asleep, it's that the wall between dreaming and being awake is completely crumbled.
The source lists 4 core symptoms. The narcoleptic tetrad.
First, yes, you have the sleep attacks. These are irresistible, overwhelming urges to sleep that can happen anytime. They might only last 10 or 20 minutes, but you absolutely cannot fight them. But the second symptom is the one that just blows my mind. Cataplexy.
Cataplexy. Break this down for us, because this is the part people don't know about.
It occurs in about 70 to 80% of patients with narcolepsy. It is a sudden bilateral loss of all voluntary muscle tone. The patient just collapses. But here is the truly incredible kicker. It is triggered by strong emotion.
Emotion. Like sadness or fear.
Usually positive emotion. Laughter, excitement, surprise. You hear a great joke, you start to laugh, and your knees buckle, and you just melt to the floor.
Wait, but are you conscious when this happens?
Fully, 100% conscious. You can hear everyone around you, you can see everything, but you cannot move a single muscle. You're trapped.
That sounds absolutely terrifying. Imagine being at a party, having a great time with your friends, and suddenly you are paralyzed on the floor, aware of everything.
It leads to immense social isolation. Patients become afraid to laugh. They learn to become emotionally flat to protect themselves from collapsing in public.
Why does this happen? What is the connection between laughter and paralysis?
Remember what we said about REM sleep? Remember the paralysis, the muscle atonia that keeps us from acting out our dreams?
Yeah, the biological straitjacket.
Cataplexy is essentially that REM paralysis system misfiring and turning on while you are wide awake. The brain gets confused by the strong emotion and it flips the paralyze switch at the wrong time.
So narcolepsy is basically REM sleep leaking into your waking life.
That's the perfect way to describe it, and that explains the other 2 symptoms as well. Hypnagogic hallucinations, seeing vivid, dreamlike imagery as you're falling asleep, and sleep paralysis, waking up mentally, but finding your body is still in that paralyzed REM state. It's all the same mechanism. The boundaries between states have dissolved.
So what is causing this chaos? What broke down the wall between wakefulness and REM?
The biology here is remarkably specific. It's caused by the destruction of a very small, specific group of cells in the hypothalamus that produce a neurotransmitter called hypocretin, which is also known as orexin.
And what does Orexin do?
Orexin is the great stabilizer. Think of your sleep-wake switch like a light switch on the wall. In a healthy person, it's a firm switch, click on, click off. Orexin is the spring mechanism inside that switch that keeps it firmly in one position or the other. Without orexin, the switch is loose, it's floppy, it flickers back and forth randomly between wake and NREM and REM.
And what destroys those cells?
The leading theory is that it's an autoimmune process. The body's own immune system mistakenly identifies these specific orexin-producing cells as foreign invaders and attacks and destroys them.
So how on earth do you treat something so complex? You have this two-part problem. You have to keep them awake, but you also have to stop them from collapsing when they laugh.
It is a two-pronged approach. First, for the overwhelming sleepiness, you use stimulants.
The source mentions modafinil and armodafinil.
Yes, those are the standard first-line treatments. They promote wakefulness. They're sometimes called eugeroics, which just means good arousal agents. They're generally considered cleaner than traditional amphetamines, less jitteriness, less euphoria, and less addictive potential.
Though the text does say that traditional stimulants like Ritalin or methylphenidate are still used sometimes.
They are, yes, but they carry higher risks of cardiovascular side effects and abuse potential. You could say modafinil is the scalpel, while amphetamines are more of a hammer.
And the second front of the attack, cataplexy. How do you stop the paralysis?
Well, since cataplexy is just misplaced REM paralysis, you need drugs that suppress REM sleep. And as it turns out, doctors often use certain antidepressants like venlafaxine or fluoxetine for this.
Because, as we learned earlier when we talked about insomnia, many of those drugs suppress REM as a side effect.
Exactly. But here, we use that side effect as the main therapeutic effect. We want to crush the amount of REM sleep they get to stop the collapses from happening during the day.
But there is one other drug mentioned in the text. It's called the heavy hitter, sodium oxybate. This one really stood out to me because of what it actually is.
This is a fascinating and powerful drug. Chemically, it is sodium oxybate. On the street, it is known as gamma-hydroxybutyrate, or GHB.
Wait, isn't that a notorious party drug? The so-called date rape drug?
In a criminal context, yes, it has that reputation. But medically, under the brand name Xyrem, it is a miracle drug for many people with narcolepsy. It's an incredibly potent sedative hypnotic.
But wait, how does a sedative help if the problem is falling asleep all the time?
It works by consolidating their nighttime sleep. Remember, narcoleptics have terribly fragmented sleep at night too because their brains keep flipping into REM. This drug forces them into a very deep, solid, consolidated block of sleep at night. By dramatically improving their nighttime sleep quality, it improves their daytime alertness, and crucially, it is the single most effective drug for reducing cataplexy.
But the administration schedule is intense, to say the least.
It is unique in all of medicine. The drug has a very short half-life, so it doesn't last all night. The patient has to take one dose right at bedtime. They fall into a deep, almost coma-like sleep. Then they have to set an alarm for 2.5 to 4 hours later.
And they have to wake themselves up.
They have to wake themselves up from this incredibly deep sleep, groggily take a second dose of this powerful sedative that they keep on their nightstand, and then fall back asleep.
That requires an immense amount of discipline. You have to wake up in the middle of the night to take your sleeping pill.
Precisely. And because it is such a significant central nervous system depressant, the risks are very high. You absolutely cannot mix this with alcohol or other sedatives. If you drink a glass of wine and take your Xyrem, you might simply stop breathing in your sleep.
It really highlights how severe this condition must be. If waking up at 2 a.m. to take a potent, risky drug is the best available solution, the suffering of untreated narcolepsy must just be immense.
It is a profoundly debilitating condition. Managing it becomes a lifestyle. It's not just, oh, I'm a little sleepy. It's, I can't trust my own body in public.
So we've toured the major disorders. We've seen the faulty chemistry, the bad plumbing, and the broken switches. Now, Section 6, synthesis and practical takeaways. How do doctors actually figure this stuff out? You can't just ask someone, how did you sleep last night? Because they were, well, if they were asleep. They don't know if they stopped breathing 400 times.
You need objective data. You can't rely on subjective reports. That's where polysomnography or PSG comes in. This is the formal sleep study.
Describe the setup for us. What's it like?
You go to a sleep clinic. You have to try and sleep in a strange bed in a strange room. And they wire you up with dozens of electrodes. It is the only way to truly know what is happening in the dark. It measures three key things simultaneously.
The text lists EEG, EOG, and EMG.
Right. EEG is electroencephalogram that measures brainwaves. That tells us if you're in delta or stage 1 or REM. EOG is electrokilogram that measures eye movements. That's how we spot REM. And EMG is electromyogram that measures muscle tension on the chin and legs that tells us if you're paralyzed in REM or if your legs are kicking all night.
And they measure breathing, too.
Of course. They have belts around your chest, sensors at your nose for airflow, a pulse oximeter on your finger for oxygen levels, and an ECG for your heart rate.
It paints a complete real-time picture of the night. It connects all the dots.
Exactly. It solves the mystery. The data might show, oh, you aren't tired because you're depressed. You're tired because your oxygen dropped 80 times an hour, or your legs kicked 600 times last night. That last one is a different condition. Periodic limb movement disorder, by the way.
And the source really emphasizes that once you identify and treat the underlying sleep disorder, it often resolves all these other awake problems that seemed unrelated.
Absolutely. It's incredible. You treat the apnea with a CPAP machine, and suddenly the patient's resistant high blood pressure, which they've been on 3 medications for, just disappears. You treat the chronic insomnia, and suddenly their anxiety becomes manageable without other drugs. It's all connected. Sleep is the foundation. And if the foundation is cracked, the whole house is going to lean.
So for the listener who is maybe hearing all this and getting worried about their own sleep, the source gives us a sort of final checklist, a diagnostic tree for yourself.
Right. Before you jump to the conclusion that I have a rare disorder, you have to ask the basic questions. Is it hygiene? Are you just drinking coffee at 6 p.m. and staring at your phone in bed? Is it medical? Could it be a thyroid issue or could it be apnea? Is it psychological? Are you under immense stress or are you depressed?
And the big one you mentioned before, are you self-medicating?
I cannot stress this enough. So many people try to solve their sleep problems with alcohol. It works to put you to sleep. It's a sedative, but it absolutely destroys the quality of the rest you get. It fragments sleep, it suppresses REM, and it makes apnea significantly worse. It is a trap.
We've covered a huge amount of ground today, from the 90-minute sleep cycle to the bizarre world of Z drugs and the tragic mechanism of narcolepsy.
It really is a complex and fascinating field. It feels like one of the last great frontiers of neuroscience.
I want to leave our listeners with a thought that really struck me while I was rereading the section on the side effects of Ambien. The source mentions, as a documented medical fact, sleep eating. People getting up, preparing food, eating it, maybe even cleaning up afterwards, all while their conscious self is completely offline.
It raises a profound, almost philosophical question, doesn't it?
It does. We all like to think that we are in control, that our consciousness, the pilot in the cockpit. But if our brain can perform these complex, goal-oriented tasks, like driving a car or cooking a meal or having a conversation, without us being there to witness it, then who is actually driving the bus?
It suggests that our conscious experience might just be a thin layer on top of a very capable, very automated machine. The machine can run the basic programs without the pilot even being in the seat.
A machine that clearly needs its maintenance. Which I think brings us to our sign-off.
Respect your rest. Sleep isn't just a passive off state. It is a complex, chemically active, absolutely vital maintenance cycle for your brain and your body. If you don't maintain the machine will break down. And as we've seen today, fixing it is a lot harder and a lot messier than maintaining it in the first place.
Well said. Thanks for diving in with us. Now go get some Delta sleep.